Folks, this is Book Talk with Corbin. I'm your host. We have with us Sister Beanie. She's been here before. Go to my website, booktalkwithcorbin.com, and you'll be able to pull up at least one or two other interviews we've done with her. I want to strongly encourage my listeners not only to go to No Left Turn in Education, go to their website, but I also want to encourage you every time I do an interview with her, please share it with other people and try to do your best, if you know anyone, to have them share it with people who are in the state legislature.
Yes.
It is very, very important. Folks, this is a critical time for students in Jefferson County. I've been here in Jefferson County since I was 12. My father brought my sister, myself to Louisville. He was recruited to work for the Kentucky Commission on Human Rights. He deliberately chose a particular neighborhood so that we can go to a high school that had a high rate as far as sending kids to college was concerned. And at that time, eventually busing became a big issue. Everything they said busing was going to solve did not happen. I think my father, if he lived up to this point, he'd be very disappointed. Everything they said busing would solve did not happen. And there's plenty of evidence to show, if anything, things are reversed. Things have gotten worse. So we got to take a different direction, folks. So let me get off my soapbox. This interview is not about me, it's about this sister right here. And the speech she gave, I think you want to give them like 3 minutes when you speak before the board. Isn't that right, sis?
That's correct, yes.
Only 3 minutes.
Yes.
So this is what she said to them October 5th. What I'm going to do is just read a paragraph and then stop and just have her give us a little more meat, so to speak. So here's the beginning of it. Early literacy unlocks the world for children. For all children, it has the potential to break the cycle of generational poverty, which is a key indicator of low student achievement in school. Dr. Ben Carson and Dr. Thomas Sowell both attribute their success to early literacy despite being born into poverty. Tell me a little bit more about your thoughts on that, sis, what you were thinking.
Well, I mean, we have other examples that we can point to as well, but those two gentlemen to me are remarkable in terms of sort of where they started and where they are today. And I respect both of them, their writing and their speaking and everything so much. And I'm learning more and more every day about Dr. Thomas Sowell. But and I've always been a very strong proponent of early literacy. And when I say early literacy, I mean from the time that children are born, they should be exposed to a lot of books all the time, every bit of it. I'm a believer in phonics. I'm a believer in all of that. But I'm also a believer in just teaching children to learn to love reading. And when they do, it really opens up an opportunity for them to learn about so much more than what they live in their small world. Eventually then they get to learn about other cultures, other worlds, other people, other experiences that are not theirs. And so it opens up that opportunity to them. And also, for my children, my 4 children, they were all avid readers, and it was their escape. I mean, they would go to their room and they would escape into a book and into the world that book was. Or, when they were really little, they would sit in the middle of the floor with books surrounding them, and they were escaping into either a world created by Dr. Seuss or a world created by Audrey Wood, whatever it was. And so it just opens up opportunities for them. And everything you do, whether you're a scientist, a doctor, an engineer, whatever you do, you still need to read. Every career path is going to require reading. Now, I'm not very good at math, but I can choose a lot of careers that don't have anything to do with math. But there are very few careers you're going to choose that don't involve reading. So early literacy is really and truly just key. And there are other factors involved in generational poverty. We know that. You and I have talked about that, in different times. But really and truly, that is just one tool that you can provide children that helps so much in moving them forward.
Yeah, and you had mentioned, earlier that hey, they're not just Dr. Ben Carson and Dr. Thomas Sowell, but many other examples.
Absolutely.
I would say like a Booker T. Washington.
Yes.
Read his.
Frederick Douglass. I mean, his wasn't early literacy, but it was literacy that, that propelled him. Yeah.
Both men clearly throughout their whole lives expressed, as you put it, like a hunger for reading.
Yes.
Like a hunger for it. These guys are nuts. Malcolm X is another example. Richard Wright's another example. Richard Wright talked about how in his particular city, I think it was in Mississippi, black folks weren't allowed to check out books at the public library, but some white dude said, here, you can use my library card and go check out some books. And Richard Wright frequently talked about how that was a turning point in his life. Being able to go to the library and read so many books.
And that's what Dr. Sowell said, that someone took him to the public library and he said, you can check out, all these books. And he said, you mean just for free? I can just, really? Right. And it did. It opened up a whole new world to him.
World for him. Yeah. Let's go on to the second paragraph. And by the way, folks, I did not read all of the first paragraph. I don't want to read the whole thing because I want you to go to their website and get the whole thing yourself and read it yourself. All right. Quote, the science of reading and comprehension are proven techniques when teaching students to read. And you talk about phonics, fluency, vocabulary in there. Mississippi decided to set aside the latest trends in academics and start using tried and true methods in 2013. By 2019, Mississippi was the only state in America where more fourth graders became proficient in reading on the NAEP. Now, I'm not sure what NAEP, but you'll tell us what that is. On the NAEP Reading Proficiency Assessment. Give me more on that, sis.
Okay, so that's a national assessment. Not every school in the country participates, or school district in the country participates in the national assessment. But Mississippi, some districts in Mississippi do, and Jefferson County does, Kentucky does. So it compares scores nationwide, reading and math. And you can pull up both. You can go to, they have a really very easy thing to use. It's called the dashboard, the nation's report card. And you can go to the dashboard and you can plug in your school district and look at your scores. And you can go back to, I went back to 2009. So that was kind of, and we'll talk about that, I guess, in the next paragraph. But the key thing about what Mississippi did is they basically took what Milton Wright said about the science of reading, that, there's phonemic awareness. Phonics is key. And I was there. I was a almost new teacher, and then a new teacher when we threw out phonics and replaced it with whole language. Okay, that's literally throwing the baby out with the bathwater. You cannot teach reading without phonics. So you have phonemic awareness, you have phonics, you have fluency, and then vocabulary. That's another thing too, that, we kind of quit challenging kids on vocabulary and requiring them to look words up in dictionaries and things like that, because, well, we have to worry about their social emotional status. And if we tell them that word is wrong, or it's not spelled correctly, or, whatever, then we might be hurting them emotionally. Well, what happens to an adult who graduates from high school or college and still can't spell? That's pretty painful emotionally to be an adult that way. It's better to teach a 5, 6, 7-year-old, how to do that rather than try to do that in an adult. So anyhow, Mississippi adopted the science of reading, those standards, 5 things that they focused on. And the reason I use Mississippi is because I was listening to Richard Ennis. He gave a presentation and he talked about how Mississippi used to be the state we like to compare ourselves to in Kentucky because they made us look good. Right. And well, they don't make us look good anymore. they make us look even worse than what we are here in Kentucky. So so they actually have made tremendous progress since 2013, since they adopted these strategies for teaching reading to their students. And that is really important. And this is decades and decades of research. This isn't just some new fad or trend that, well, let's try this and see what works. It's tried and true. This stuff really does work. And, can it be perfected? Sure, along the years we can perfect it, but there's just certain things I just don't understand why we have gotten rid of the things that have been proven to work and replaced it with things that really have very little evidence of improving student achievement and literacy.
And that what you just said there is key. People listen very carefully. Tried and true, proven. Mm-hmm. Science of Reading, Milton Wright. Tried and true, proven. This other stuff, Afrocentric, diversity, equity, inclusion, preferred pronouns. Folks, this is unproven. This is unproven. Totally unproven. It's not shown to produce results. And what results do we want? Kid, can you read? Can you spell? Can you do math? We good. That's great. That's what we want.
Well, we talk a lot about critical thinking skills, and the thing about critical thinking, in order to think critically about something, you have to have information to think about. And in order to gather that information, you have to be able to read to gather that information. So yes. We're not asking kindergartners to think critically. We're teaching kindergartners how to read so that by the time they're in 4th and 5th grade, they're able to read something and think critically about it because they've been able to gather the information on it. So if we want to really cultivate critical thinkers, we've got to make sure that we're cultivating readers that can gather the information to think critically about. Again, whether it's history, science, literature, current events, whatever it is, they have to be able to read. Even in this Twitter world, you still have to be able to read to gather information to think critically about it. Otherwise, you're just groupthink. It's, you're thinking that because someone told you to think that rather than you gathering information and thinking critically about it.
Yes. Let's go into another paragraph here. I think it's into the third one. Meanwhile, in Jefferson County, the percentage of students who performed at or above the NAEP proficiency level was only 30% in 2019. In 2009, the average score was 259 out of 500. 10 years later, in 2019, the average score was 258 out of 500. In 2019, black students had an average score that was 35 points lower than that for white students. That is wider than the gap in 2009 when it was 22 points. Sis?
That's jarring.
Yeah, it seems like we're just going back.
Yep.
It's getting worse. I don't.
And mind you, the proficiency is baseline. We're not talking. Right. We're not talking excellent readers here. We're talking students who, are proficient. That's what they can read. They can read. So we're at 30% in 2019. That's where we were at in 2019. And you can see that the score from 2009 to 2019 actually went down a point. Now, these aren't the same students being tested, obviously, but we're clearly not making progress. And the gap has widened. And it breaks it down in race. It breaks it down among the Hispanic students, and it also breaks it down for free and reduced lunch students. So you can go to their website. It breaks it down: white, black, Hispanic, Asian, American Indian, Pacific Islander, things. So they break down into all those different categories. Male, female breaks it down. Eligible, not eligible for free and reduced lunch. So this, and again, it is a standardized test. So you take that with a grain of salt because the standardized test only tells you so much. But in my opinion, the standardized test tells you there's a problem. Mm-hmm. It's it's not the whole story, but it's a good chunk of the story, and it needs to be addressed.
Give me that website. Give us that website again, sis.
www.nationsreportcard.gov.
www.nationsreportcard.gov.
Yes, and it's the National Assessment of Educational Progress is what we keep NAEP is what we keep referring to. So And there is just a wealth of information